Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Relate Well with Dr. Rick Marks. And hope you're actually having a good evening right now. I'm actually at a friend's house in Wisconsin, and sitting in one corner of their room. I've got live right here in front of me with Instagram, and then right here I have Facebook as well as YouTube. So we're broadcasting live on three different platforms at the same time, and I'm grateful for that. So welcome. By the way, I'll be monitoring the chats. If you have a question or a comment, I would really encourage you to say hi, state your comment, ask your question. I will be monitoring the chats on all the platforms. Would love to interact with you, answer your questions, those kinds of things. Okay. So great to have you. Thanks for taking some time, at least to stop by, even if it's not for the full time. We are going to talk about love is kind, but what is kindness? What is it? I mean, you think about it right now, culture, people are so unkind. They're unkind in their marriages. They're unkind in their families to each other. They're unkind across churches. They're unkind in so many different ways. You go into certain stores or restaurants, right? And the people who work there are unkind to you. You could work somewhere and customers are unkind to you. You actually see commercials today by different companies where you'll see someone do something kind to another, and then they follow that person who received the act of kindness and they did kindness to another, and then that person who received the kindness did something else, and kind of like paying it forward. You actually see that, and those kinds of commercials kind of warm your heart, don't they? They make you feel like, wow, wish there was more of this in the world, because love is kind. Love is kind. I really believe that when we're kind, we're actually we're actually moving forward civility. We're breeding civility. We're manifesting civility, not just within ourselves, but to other people as well. You see, because kindness is something that we've been losing in this country. You could have disagreements, but you can still stay kind. Republicans unkind, Democrats are unkind, but nobody wants to admit that they're unkind because that means you have to deal with your ego issues, you see. And so, yes, that's the, it's looked, I think it's Bowman Jody. Hey, you're right. Kindness is a God given feeling, but kindness is actions as well. And to be kind on a regular basis is the way of being. We say it in our world is it requires maturity. It requires living a life as an emotional adult. Many of you who've been following me over the past few years know that my story is I grew up in a home where there wasn't a lot of kindness. There was abuse, criticism, put down, insults, messages you'll never measure up, you'll never be good enough, those kinds of things. And I grew up believing that, you see. And when you're unkind to your children, you'll tend to breed unkind children. They will model what they see. You see, you got it? Groups are unkind, and the people who are affected by those groups or go into those groups will become what the group is. You see, an organization can never really go beyond the emotional health of the leaders. If the leaders are emotionally immature, then the people who follow them cannot become healthy, mature adults because leaders cannot develop people to be something that they're not. Parents can't raise children to be something that they're not. You only raise your kids to be what you are. You can't raise your kids to be something that you're not. When I grew up, my father he had a lot of traits that were wonderful. I honor him because let's be honest, we had food, air, water, and shelter, right? We never lacked for physical needs, but unconditional love and acceptance and approval. You lived in fear of being shocked with a cow prod. My stepmother constantly criticizing, put down. You always never sure. You never really believe you're going to measure up. And the way that you were talked to in tone was unkind. And so all four of us kids in the Marks household, we live with this sense of fear and anger and hurt because of the unkindness. Now, folks, someone may be thinking right now, well, listen, if your parents gave you food, air, water, and shelter, then you should honor that. And I will tell you that I do. But let me say something to you, and I mean what I'm about to say with respect. Anybody can do food, air, water, and shelter. The U.S. government does that for millions of children every single day through Medicare and Medicaid. You with me? Anybody can provide physical things. That's about money. But you see, giving your heart away is what parenting is really about. Being a dad is not just fathering someone. Being a dad is giving your heart away. Anybody can provide food, air, water, and shelter. The government does it all the time. But the government doesn't really care about you. It just provides for you. So I didn't want to be a dad who was a provider. I didn't want to be a dad who just, gave my kids stuff to survive. I wanted my kids to feel loved. I wanted them to feel valued. I wanted them to feel that they mattered. And one thing I've learned about kindness is when you treat people with kindness, you actually send a message to them that they have value. You send the message to them that they matter. You send the message to them they have worth. When you're unkind to people, you send the message you don't have value. When you are unkind to people, you send the message you don't matter. When you're unkind to people, you send a really negative message. And when you're unkind on a regular basis, as a way of being, as I like to say from my mentors' words, as a way of being, you probably wouldn't expect people to be around you long, because you don't want to be around people who are consistently unkind to you. You see. So what is kindness? What are its characteristic traits? I mean, what is kindness? Listen to this here. Kindness is generally thought of as the quality of being friendly. The quality of being friendly, considerate, and generous. I'm reading actually from the Ethics of Kindness on the Ethics Sage blog on the internet. All right. They write here, kindness is generally thought of as the quality of being friendly, considerate, and generous. A kind person considers the feelings of others. Well, we can stop right there and talk quite a bit about kindness, considering the feelings of other people. But let me read on. A kind person considers the feelings of others. It tries to help them and avoids actions that do harm. Affection, empathy, and giving to others are qualities of a kind person. Let me read that part again. Affection, empathy, and giving to others are qualities of a kind person. In this last paragraph I want to read here, it goes on to say, kindness is also considered a virtue. Kindness is considered a virtue. It is an excellence of character. It is an excellence of character that drives ethical decisions. People who are kind act that way not for any reward or even recognition, but because it is the right way to behave and the way a person wishes others would act towards them. And they write here, it is the essence of the golden rule. It is the essence of the golden rule. Kindness is a virtue. Kindness is a trait. Now, one thing we know about kindness is to really be kind to others, you got to learn to be kind to yourself. Did you get that? You gotta be kind to your face. It's like there's two sides to kindness. There's the internal side and there's the external side. All right. The internal side is when you're kind to yourself. You don't do things that hurt you. You don't do things that harm you. You don't do things that belittle you. You don't do things that take away from your value. You don't do things that create problems for yourself. Because people who have value, who value themselves, who believe they're worthy, believe they're kind, believe that they matter, actually have an internal sense of kindness. When they mess up, they're kind to themselves. They don't beat themselves up. They don't listen to what I call the little it voice down here in the back of your head that constantly criticizes you, puts you down. They tell that voice to shut up. I messed up. So what? They give themselves grace. They don't hold resentment towards themselves. They allow themselves to make mistakes and they allow themselves to mess up. They allow themselves, listen, they allow themselves to be human. They allow themselves to be human. Listen to what John C. Morgan writes. Kindness has two faces, one inside and the other outside. The inner face of kindness is towards yourself. Being kind towards oneself means accepting your shortcomings and failures as part of the maturing process and encouraging yourself for taking new steps toward being all you want to be. The other face is external. This means accepting others. And listen, he writes, this means accepting others, shortcomings and all, and treating them as you wish to be treated. The internal side of kindness is something that comes from you. Because hang on, Barbara, let me see what you're saying. I know I'm unkind when I'm triggered. I don't like it. I know my hubby's unkind when he's triggered. He doesn't like it. We are kind to each other most of the time when we're in survival mode. I'm reading, by the way, someone from one of the platforms is written and is making a comment here. Yeah, they're writing that when they get triggered, either her or her spouse, they tend to be unkind. And that would be true for a lot of people. And what I'm about to say, please take with goodwill. All right? It's because you've not learned how to emotionally regulate this lower order brain. You've not learned how to regulate that part when you're triggered. And don't, what I'm about to say, take with goodwill. I mean it with love and goodwill. I mean it with kindness. It's because you've not matured enough yet to be triggered and still treat people with goodwill and respect. It's because when you're triggered, you don't know how to treat people with goodwill and respect because you give into the lower order animal brain, which doesn't think, it just reacts. It's purely reactive. To treat people with kindness is proactive. You respond. To respond to something is proactive. It's thoughtful, higher order brain, cortex. To react to someone is a lower order animal brain right back here. Fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze will never be kind. It's all defensive. Mature people have learned to emotionally regulate and communicate because the reason they don't treat people with ill will or disrespect or uncaring ways is because they move to humility. And in humility, you're able to give people grace because you give yourself grace. You're able to have compassion because you give yourself compassion. And Barbara, I don't know if this is helping you or not, but as you kind of work through the journey of maturing when it comes to conflict, always ask yourself, is what I'm about to say or do, is it kind? If it's not kind, keep it out. If you're not sure, here's a phrase for you. When in doubt, keep it out. There's an old Jewish proverb that says, a fool appears wise. You get that? A fool appears wise when he keeps his mouth shut. See, I was so immature back in the day that I had this internal thought that if I felt something or thought something, then I needed to share it. What I found out was it's actually immature. Not everything I think or feel needs to be shared. Wisdom tells you when to talk and when not to talk. And so one of the things that I had to learn to do 25 something years ago when I started to really change my life and become more mature was I had to learn how to be kind, particularly in conflict. What I learned was I had to be kind to myself. You see, there's this little voice in our head that always blames others, puts others down, puts you down. And we listen to that voice. And that voice will keep you from being kind. That voice will keep you from having an internal kindness. Yeah, if you're so unkind to your partner and you put them down on a regular basis, folks, then it begs the question, if all you see is negative in your partner, what'd you marry them for? Are you telling me there's nothing positive about them? Are you telling me that they have no good traits? Are you telling me that there's nothing positive in their life or who they are? would you marry them for? If you married someone who has nothing good about them, that says a lot more about you marrying that person than it does them. You see, in conflict, we only tend to look to the negative. Mature people are able to stay in the present and recognize, in kindness, I can recognize that Luella may be acting a certain way in the moment, but that's not who she is all the time. She's just hurt. Or maybe that's what she knows to do right now because that's all she's ever done. Kindness allows grace to happen. Kindness allows for compassion and empathy to flow. And that's why love is kind, you see. When you treat people with unkindness on a regular basis, they could question whether you love them or not. Because why would you be unkind to someone you say you love? That doesn't make sense. If you treat someone you say you love on a regular basis in an unkind way, you're just creating in them a conversation in their head. Do you love me? Right? And so kindness improves your own quality of life. It improves your health. People who are constantly negative, who only see things in a negative way, who have the inability or don't want to see things that are positive, these people are typically angry. They're fearful. They'll end up can be clinically depressed. They can have anxiety problems. They can move to addictions. All right. But they're not able to see reality. They're not able to see reality. Why? Because you're only going to see the negative in life. That's all you want to see. There's no kindness in that, not for others, and definitely not for yourself. Kindness allows you to step back and see the bigger picture. Kindness allows you to step back and go, there's got to be another, what I call a perspective. My wife's got a perspective, I got a perspective, one reality. And we get to see each other's perspective and put those perspectives together to create understanding. Unkindness won't allow you to see another person's perspective because you'll diminish their perspective. You'll invalidate their perspective. You'll criticize their perspective. You'll tear down their perspective. And what you're really saying is what you see, what you think, what you feel of this issue doesn't matter to me. What matters is what I think and feel. Your perspective doesn't matter. That is so unkind. You wouldn't like it done to you, but yet we do it to other people regularly. Kindness improves your quality of life because in so doing, your body in the physical level tends to thrive. Emotionally, you tend to thrive. So it improves quality of life emotionally. It actually improves your quality of life in the workplace. You've been around someone in the workplace who's constantly unkind. Man, you think about it, they make the workplace so, I don't even know the word, blah. They make the workplace like dreadful. You don't want to go be around them. You want to stay away from them, right? You want their cubicle moved to the other side of the room so you don't have to deal with them anymore. But kindness makes the workplace loving. It creates great teamwork. Kindness does so many positive things in the workplace. And by the way, it'll improve the quality of life in your marriage. It'll improve the quality of life as a parent in your family. I think the biggest benefit of living a life of kindness is the quality of life that it does for you. You tend to live more peacefully. You tend to live less sick emotionally, physically. You tend to be more joyful. You tend to be more patient. You don't tend to be rude. You tend to be more accepting. You tend to be more appreciative, all because you've chosen to live a life of kindness. You see, kindness also increases the quality of life of your community. Let's say you're a part of a church group, or maybe it's a football group, or little league, or something like that. Can you imagine a bunch of people in a community group being unkind to each other? It's no different than the workplace. To not be around it. It makes a community stronger. Makes a community healthier. When there's unkindness, your community suffers as well. We can see that in recent times, where the anger and hurt and the expression of the anger and hurt because of things that happened have led to buildings being burned, destruction of property, theft. People take advantage of things. Why? Because they're unkind. And yet some people praise that unkindness. They praise it. They cherish it. They value it. Why? Because they're unkind themselves. No wonder they would do that. Mature people don't live that way, but immature people do. It's just the nature of maturity and emotional relational health. You see, kindness improves our quality of life. Listen to this paragraph. Listen to this paragraph from the Ethics Sage website where I'm reading from earlier. Listen to this. Comedian Ellen DeGeneres often speaks to audiences of kindness, saying, which she does, be kind to everyone. She usually ends her shows with be kind, be kind. Listen to this. Last year at a Dallas Cowboys game, she was seen sitting next to former President George W. Bush. Some criticized her for it, while others were delighted by an action that hopefully catches on. Ellen posted this online in response to her critics. Quote, in fact, I'm friends with a lot of people who don't share the same beliefs that I have. We are all different, and I think we've forgotten that that's okay, that we're all different. Just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. You see, she understands the value of kindness. The value of kindness, you see. And now someone's writing here, Stacy's writing, if you have the 4 horsemen in your marriage, can you turn around? The answer, Stacy, is yes. All right, the 4 horsemen, for those that don't know, they're known as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This is based on research around marriage by Dr. John Gottman. These, what he calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, are these 4 things in a marriage predict divorce 93%. Did you get that? They predict divorce 93%. Now, what are these 4 things? Here they are. Number 1, it's criticism. Number 2 is defensiveness. Number 3 is showing contempt for your partner. And number 4 is stonewalling, where I'm just not going to talk to you. But you understand, to have contempt for someone, to not talk to them, to be defensive, and to be critical is unkind. It's just unkind. And yes, Stacy, matter of fact, in our work and Relate Well, we live by 4 principles: goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. Excuse me, goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy. To live a life of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy requires you being a kind person, which requires emotional maturity, which is the essence of our Relate Well work, you see. In our 4 principles of living by those 4 principles, and we teach you how to live the skills for goodwill, respect, humility, empathy. Those 4 things are protectors against the 4 horsemen. I've been living by these principles for 25 years as a way of being, to the best of my ability, not perfectly, but maturely. Why? I wanted to be kind. I wanted to be a patient person. Why? Because love is patient and love is kind. Sadly, even in the church groups, we see unkindness. We see unkindness in sermons. We see unkindness, like church leaders to church members. We see unkindness, church members to church members. We see unkindness in Christian families. We see unkindness across denominations. And when you're unkind, you're not loving. It's not rocket science. It's just that simple. And if you want to be an unkind person, no judgments on my part, but please don't complain about what you reap when you are unkind on a regular basis. You see, if you sow discord, you reap discord. To live a life of unkindness is to sow discord. It is to sow hurt. It is to sow harm. It is to sow pain, because kindness doesn't do those things. And by the way, you can speak in love. You can speak a truth lovingly with kindness. Got it? Even if what you have to say is painful for someone to hear, you can still do it with kindness. Or you can do it with unkindness. It has to do with your motives. All right. So, what are some behaviors of kindness? Well, I'm going to continue to read some things from this article. Kind people often exhibit certain characteristics, such as number one, when they ask, "How are you?" and they really mean it. Now, many years ago, one of my great teachers and mentors was Dr. Jerry Mungazzi. I love Jerry dearly to this day. Now, Jerry was born and raised in the bush in Africa. All right, so Jerry is African, and he's one of the most brilliant men I know. He's a psychologist out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he's brilliant on the brain and trauma and spiritual things. But I'll never forget many years ago, back in the late 80s, when I started working with him, he said to me, you Americans, he said, "You're just very unkind." I went, "What do you mean?" He said, "When I came to your country, you have this greeting, Rick. You would say, 'Oh, Jerry, how are you?' And I stopped to tell you. And then I realized y'all didn't want to know. It's just some greeting you have." He said, "You understand, in Africa, you never ask a person a personal question about themselves and not want to know. It's actually unkind." And I thought to myself, we do that, don't we? That's what we all know to say, "I'm fine. Everything's good," when it really is not. Because people don't really want to know. And from that, I came to a place where I'm no longer going to ask, "How are you?" if I'm not willing to stop and listen. And if I'm not able or willing to stop and listen, you might hear things from me like, "Hi, it's good to see you. Hope you have a good day. But I won't ask how you are, because I don't want to be disrespectful to you. And I don't want you to have to say everything's fine, when in reality, it really isn't." I think that's just disrespectful. It's actually unkind. Number two, they always have something nice to say about others. If you're like me, you remember your parents saying, if you don't have anything nice to say about another person, say nothing. That was the number 2 point that they made in this article. That's that idea in the Four Horsemen about being critical. Critical people, all they see is the negative. They've got nothing nice to say about other people. It's negative, 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 negative. And that's okay. Be negative if you want to be. But negativity doesn't draw people to you. It actually draws people away from you long term, because the energy of negativity affects other people's souls as well. And people feel heavy around constantly negative people. When you're critical, you don't want to be around that all the time. It's soul draining. Did you get that? It's soul draining. Kindness is life giving. Unkindness is soul draining. Do you want to be life giving to your spouse, or to be soul draining to your spouse? You get to choose by how you act moment by moment, kindly or unkindly. Next one, he writes here in his article, "They are willing to step in and help out whenever needed. No questions asked, no favors expected in return." In other words, kind people will step in and help other people, but they don't have an expectation of something in return. They do it out of love. They do it out of kindness. They understand that to serve others is a great act of human kindness, to help your fellow man. One of the things that I always like to do is be kind to people, particularly when I see someone struggling or hurting, to give them an encouraging word. To share appreciations with people is kind. It just lifts them up. When you hear someone who's kind of, self-deprecating, there's a lot of kindness come along. I really see you kind of beat yourself up. You ought to know that you've got wonderful qualities about you as well. Speak kindness to people. Speak into people's lives. Be soul affirming. be life-giving, not soul-draining. You see, third step here is they will step in and help. They don't expect things in return. They're going to be speaking words of appreciation and approval on a regular basis. And when they serve you, it's because they want to. All you have to do is say, thank you. Just thank you. You don't have to say anything else. Just say thank you. They did it out of the goodness of their own heart because that's what they want to do. Why? They're kind people. Kindness as a way of being allows you to, more often not, to have a caring disposition. It allows you to have an open heart towards people. It allows you to have a friendly disposition. It allows you to be affirming and vulnerable and welcoming. And one of the things I love is that people, and I'm not, it's going to sound like I'm being egotistical, I'm not, it's just kind of the way things can be, is I love that people feel safe around me to open up and share. And I don't think it's because I'm a minister or a psychologist. Some people don't know that. I want to give off a disposition that you can be around me and be loved and valued and that you won't be judged or criticized. Why? That comes from a heart of kindness. But I had to really mature myself to live that way as a way of being. And sometimes love is kind by being patient. Did you get that? Sometimes love is kind by being patient. Impatience leads to unkind actions. Unkindness will reinforce impatience. It's not rocket science, folks. It's just that simple. The question is, how do you want to be as a way of being? And that's what you get to decide for yourself, you see. You get to decide whether this is something you want to be. Kindness, you see, is it's a powerful way to live life. I'll just say that simply. It's a powerful way to live life. Powerful in the sense that you're okay with your shortcomings. You give yourself grace. You don't expect yourself to be perfect. And when you live a life of kindness, you do things like opening the doors for others, like going to a building. I was at a military museum today, right? And I love the U.S. military, and I went to this museum up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And the two guys, veterans that worked there, were working on this mannequin, this uniform mannequin, and one of the men had dropped a piece of paper that he's holding. And I heard him go, when he dropped it. And I saw it, and I went over and just picked it up. And I said, hey, I'm going to put this paper right here. He's a big man, have a big, heavy-set man, older than I am, 60. He's probably in his 70s. And you could tell he had a bad hip by the way he walked. I just went and picked it up, and he said, hey, buddy, I'll put this piece of paper right here. He said, oh, thank you for doing that. What joy it brought me to do that for him. But what message did it send him that somebody cared enough, kind enough, just to do that so he wouldn't have to stoop down with his bad hip? Do you see? It brings joy to do those things. Kindness is when you learn to be patient with someone and let them hurt. Kindness listens. Unkindness wants to talk. Kindness seeks to understand how a person thinks and feels. Kindness seeks to understand another person's perspective. Unkindness forces you to hear my perspective. No goodwill in it, people. No goodwill in it. And every single day, every moment, you decide, are you going to be kind or unkind? How would you like to be? What kind of What kind of person do you want to be? And how do you want to live a life of kindness? Love is kind. It takes maturity to live this way as a way of being. Groups are unkind to each other. Spouses are unkind to each other. Communities are unkind to each other. Groups, people groups are unkind to each other. And the lack of kindness that's in our country today, people cutting you off in traffic without even considering the effects of their behavior on other people, that's unkind. America is so self-centered today. America, because we're so focused on independence, our hyper independence has created a culture that sends the message, I don't care about you. I can do what I want. Well, hi there, Luminary Lena. I'm not sure who you are, but don't take that personal, but hi to you. All right. And thank you for joining us. The more independent and selfish you become, the more unkind you become. And that's what I've seen in our culture today. We're unkind to people because of different political views. We're unkind to people because of different theological views. My perspective is more right and yours is wrong. We'll throw relationships ways just to win an argument. Why? Well, hello there, Miss Lena. Thank you for telling me that. I'd not seen your name on Instagram. And folks, this is a wonderful lady who's just showed up. And I love her and her husband. They're wonderful friends of mine. He's a therapist out of Houston. Good man, solid man, kind man in my mind. Hope he's kind to you, Lena. If not, I'll have to come whooping for you. All right. And she's just a jewel. She is a jewel. Folks, love is kind. It takes maturity, emotional maturity, to live a life of kindness. But people who live a life of kindness as a virtue, as an ethic, I say it this way, as a way of being, are people who are not easily triggered. They are people that, when triggered, regulate themselves. They're actually very wonderful people to be around. You're drawn to those kinds of people. My prayer and hope for myself has been that I'm that kind of a person. Not perfectly, but to the best of my ability, maturely, that I am kind and patient so people would feel the love. So people would feel the love. May it be that we can be that kind of person. But to get there, I'm going to tell you, requires a life of goodwill, respect, empathy. And you cannot have that without humility. The four protectors of an us, the four protectors of a relationship, as we call it in Relate Well. Because to live a life of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy requires kindness. And as we all know, love is kind. Hey, thanks for hanging in here and listening to me. I'll be back in a little bit to do another Relate Well with Dr. Rick Marks. And by the way, check out our podcast, Relate Well with Dr. Rick Marks. We're on all the big sites, Google, Apple, et cetera, Spotify. You can download our podcast that I do with my co-host, Angelia Savage. She keeps me in line. She keeps me focused. And so we have all kinds of topics. Go to Relate Well with Dr. Rick Marks. Download our podcast. Start listening to those. We put them up about every month, all right? 2 to 4 a month. And leave us a thought. If you listen to our podcast, give us a good review if you want. And for those that are looking for something to read, more about how I think, get my book, Relationships for Life. That's Relationships for Life. You can pick it up at Amazon. Just type in Richard Marks, M-A-R-K-S, Relationship for Life. Relationships for Life. Get the book. Leave me a review there. I would greatly appreciate it. Have a great evening. I'll be back in a little bit. Bye-bye.